Good afternoon, folks. Some things we gotta talk about and cover. First, the George Orwell quote. I'm gonna reread that. And the Jefferson Davis quote for part 2. Again, Jefferson Davis was right. But we're gonna get to that point of how he was right. But we'll read that quote after I read the George Orwell quote of how it pertains to his quote. Well, first, let me read Jefferson Davis's quote. The principle for which we contend is bound to reassert itself, though it may be at another time in another form. Well, now we read George Orwell's quote from his 1984 book. Every record has been destroyed or falsified, every book rewritten, every picture has been repainted, every statue and street building has been renamed, every date has been altered, and the process is continuing day by day and minute by minute. History has stopped. Nothing exists except an endless present in which the party is always right. Alright, what do these two quotes have in common? Well, the part where he says where Jefferson Davis says, the principle for which we contend is bound to reassert itself, is very simple to what George Orwell says. I mean, considering the Civil War ended and history was pretty much going about itself, and when you take down statues to what it says, and first of all, if the name Jefferson Davis offends you, you're part of the problem. If anything with the word Jefferson Davis offends you, George Washington, or anything else there offends you, you have a problem. Nancy Pelosi and all you Democrats, this is for you. George Washington didn't want to have anything to do with slavery. Thomas Jefferson didn't want any slaves. Abraham Lincoln, he was the party to free slaves. He was the Republican Party. And what are you? You're a Democrat. So don't give me this hogwash that they be crying in their grave and rolling in their graves right now about this way this country is going. Now, as of the Civil Rights Acts that have gone on, we're going to do a little history about the Civil Rights Act. First, starting in 1866. Yes, of course, there was a Democrat in charge, but he was partially. Let's go down the history marks here. We'll look at him here. The Civil War, we'll begin with that. They even took down a Civil War talk right there. Let's get here. Andrew Johnson, who was a Democrat. I get it. But he was the right-hand man of Republican Abraham Lincoln, who was shot and assassinated the day after the Civil War ended. Yes, the day after the Civil War ended. He wanted to fill an act, the Civil Rights Act of 1866. It passed the Senate 33-12. And all 12 of those that opposed were Democrats. Not a single Democrat voted for it. All 33 were Republican. Interesting. Even though he was a Democrat, He approved it, and he signed it into law. Then we go on. Let's look at this here. The Civil Rights Act on March 27th the Senate overrides Johnson. He vetoes the bill. Imagine that. A Democrat vetoes the bill. But, however, the Senate overrides his veto and gets it. And gets it passed because the Senate is a majority of Republicans. So, of course, the Republicans win in 1866. So, what happens next? 1875. We go to 1875 when guess what? A Republican was in office. That's right. Ulysses S. Grant, a former general of Army during the Civil War, was in charge. Charles Sumner, a Republican, introduced the bill in 1870, which took time to get all the stuff together by the 41st Congress. But in 1875, it passed 162 to 100 without a single Democrat. Again, not one Democrat voted for it. In Congress, 12 Republicans, 2 liberal Republicans, and 1 independent Republican. 1 independent Republican and 1 independent Democrat voted against the bill. The Senate passed the bill 38 to 26 without a single Democrat vote. Again, with 21 Republicans against it. There you have it. Not one Democrat voted for it. This is what our country's come to. Democrats are always against it. Then, the Civil Rights Act of 1957. Dwight D. Eisenhower is the president. June 18th, House passes the bill with 286 to 126, with 167 Republicans were against the bill. Actually, were for the... 167 presidents were for, and 119 Democrats were also for the bill, while 107 Democrats... Now, listen to these numbers very closely that are against it. 107 Democrats against, and 19 Republicans were also against. Now, I see the number. Democrats are more against than Republicans. Now, August 7th, the Senate passes the bill with the amendment 72 to 18, with 43 Republicans for the bill, 29 Democrats for the bill, and 18 Republicans against the bill. Not one Republican voted against the bill. Interesting how that works, isn't it? August 27th, House agreed to the amendment, the Senate amendment, with further amendment, 279 to 97, with 150 Republicans for and 129 Democrats for the amendment, with 82 Democrats and 15 Republicans against it. Then August 29th, Senate agrees to the House amendment, 60 to 15, with 37 Republicans, 23 Democrats for the amendment, while 15 Democrats were against the amendment. Not one Republican voted against that. Weird, isn't it? Then the Civil Rights Act of 1960. Dwight D. Eisenhower is president. Again, his second term. The House amendment passes 311 to 109, with 179 Democrats, 132 Republicans for the amendment, with 93 Democrats and 15 Republicans against the amendment. The Senate voted 71 to 18 for the amendment, 42 Democrats, 29 Republicans, I can't talk, for the amendment, and 18 Democrats against the amendment. Weird. Not one Republican against it. The amendment is approved 288 to 95 with 165 Democrats, 123 Republicans for the amendment, 82 Democrats, 12 Republicans against the amendment. Then the final one, when the Civil Rights Movement actually passed in 1865, when it was finally signed into law, in 64, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, when it was finally signed into law, Lyndon Johnson, who was the other Democrat who actually approved the law, it was passed by the House, which was mostly all Democrats, 290 to 130. 152 Democrats with 138 Republicans all approved for the amendment. 96 Democrats and 34 Republicans were against it. And the amendment was passed 73 to 27. With 46 Democrats and 27 Republicans against the amendment. 21 Democrats and 6 Republicans were against the amendment. So, now, we go on to when Martin Luther King Day was finally made as a national holiday. 1983, when Ronald Reagan was president. He's a Republican. And then we go to another day. It officially became a holiday then. That George H.W. Bush signed it all. I mean, it really makes a lot of sense. This is what they all try to do. They try to change and make everything. This is where they try to rewrite quotes and everything. And this is where the Jefferson Davis quote and the George Orwell both coming together in one. Now, Jefferson Davis might have been a Democrat, but he's pretty much summing it up with what George Orwell is putting it together in one. Because he sums it up by saying, he pretty much sums it up kind of together with one, because they're reasserting by force, aka authoritarianism, because the Democrats are trying to be very authoritarian. And pretty much summed it up pretty well. Trying to make it differently, yet the Democrats want to be very authoritarian, while the Republicans are not technically being authoritarian. And yet, how authoritarian can you possibly get? Very simple. All you have to do is one thing. Charge at them, make them weak. Pretty much, all you have to do is one thing. Go at them, take out one thing at a time. Jefferson Davis pretty much summed it up like he wanted it. But George Orwell pretty much signed it over like he wanted it. George Orwell says, I will do what I want to do. And he signed pretty much all these books. And all these falsified documents pretty much are what it is this day. They want to take down all history. Do this George Floyd hogwash. But yet, the thing about these people, what the South did during the Civil War was bad. And it never should have happened. Of course, I condemn that. And it's not right what happened. It never should have happened at all. But that's literally every country's past. But technically, if you really want to get down and technical about it, you have to really look at how every country has had its past. Literally every country has gone through this. But the Democrats want to rewrite history and try to make this country look like it never happened that way. Which is not how it is. They want to try to make themselves look like the party of love. And like Donald Trump says, President Donald Trump said this, go woke and be broke. In which is exactly what some of these companies are doing to themselves. He even said, what are you going to do, take Jefferson's statue down because he owned slaves? And yet Al Sharpton says, I want every statue down of a president that ever owned a slave. But yet, these liberals who are so found about certain things don't understand this stuff. There's plenty of them that own slaves, but they actually fought. And then, Teddy Roosevelt was taken out of a New York, his statue was taken out of a New York museum and it's going to be sent to a library up in North Dakota. So sad. But yet, what did he do? It was all because he has an Indian and a black person beside him. But he was real good with those people. The Indian and the black person, side by side, always were good. He was good with them. Why? Because he sent them charging up the hill and attacked. He attacked them. He pretty much sent Buffalo soldiers who were black soldiers up the hill on the left flank at Battle of San Juan Hill. He was a colonel during that time frame. He sent them up the hill. While Wheeler was down, Wheeler put him in charge. But then Wheeler came back closer towards the end of the battle and helped him with the charge. They still kept him in charge, even though Wheeler was sick. But he put him in charge. Sent him up the hill in the battle. And they still won the battle. Now, Joseph Wheeler, who was a former Confederate general, was very smart by sending him in charge because he sent the troops up the hill and pretty much decimated them. San Juan Hill was demolished by not only the Buffalo soldiers, but there was also small little Indian troops mixed in with those Buffalo soldiers. And if it hadn't been for those Buffalo soldiers, they probably couldn't have accomplished that. Those Buffalo soldiers were a big contribution to that victory. And that was the 24th Infantry Regiment, along with the 10th Cavalry Regiment. Joseph Wheeler knew what he was doing. Joseph Wheeler was smart. He's from, I can't remember if he's from Georgia or South Carolina. I can't remember which state it was. But he's from the South. And he knew exactly what he was doing. But yet, they want to replace, they want to remember, the Democrats are all about making history about criminals. They want to worship criminals while we worship heroes. The Republicans are all about worshiping heroes, while the Democrats worship criminals. That's the difference between the two parties. Criminals versus heroes. I mean, it's that simple. I've come to the conclusion where only one can be a hero, not the other. Well, I got other researches I gotta make. With that being said, I might do another segment tonight. With that being said, hit the like button, hit the bell. With that being said, I'm out of here. Peace.